Good morning. The fact that Nick doesn't know everything, I think my bubble just got burst. But my name is Jeff, and as Nick indicated, I am the bookkeeper here at Wellington Square United Church. And I've been asked to share my story of coming to faith with all of you this morning, but I'm hoping that we can agree on one thing first, that it's really not about my story. It's about each of our stories individually. Yes, the details may be unique to me, but I encourage you to use those as a way to reflect on your story, make your story new, fresh, and exciting. Can we agree on that? Okay, I got more enthusiasm than Nick did earlier, so that's good. Two things that I'd like you to know about me that I think are important. The first was that I was a very shy child. And the second, that I consider myself to be a recovering perfectionist. Now, what does that mean? Well, the first part I think is pretty obvious, is that I like things to be perfect. But it also means as a perfectionist, we quite often become the judge of what's perfect, and we quite often become our own worst critic, okay? Okay. So I want to start right here, literally, Wellington Square United Church. The date is January 11th, 1998. And I'm in the parking lot in my car, and I'm terrified. I've never been to church before, and I don't know what I believe. I don't know whether I'm going to be welcome. I'm sure that I'm going to stand out and I'm going to look different. And I'm positive that someone's going to tell me, "Sir, I'm sorry, but you must leave." But I also know that if I don't come in that day, if I drive away, the chances of me coming back and trying again are pretty slim. So I gather all my nerve, and I walk in the back door, the one by the kitchen, the one that most of you probably came in this morning. Now, the footprint of the building looked a little different in 1998, so it was not immediately clear to me where I was supposed to go. There were no greeters on the door that day, and I looked around and I saw this tall gentleman who was just standing in the hall, and I needed help, so I approached him. Just kind of slowly walked up a little sheepishly and leaned in, and I said, "I've never been here before, and I don't know what to do." Now, I'm sure the time between when I finished and when he responded was only a second or two, but it felt like an eternity. This was the moment that he was going to tell me to leave, that because I had never been here before, that I didn't belong and that I should get out. But he didn't do that. In fact, my best case scenario was imagining that he would just point me down the hall and say, "Just go there." But he didn't do that either. In fact, he put on a big smile, he welcomed me, and he said, "Follow me." And he walked me into the sanctuary, kept chatting with me the whole time, and walked me up the center aisle, and he sat me down somewhere in around here. And we continued chatting. And then after a moment or two, he apologized, but he had to excuse himself. But he promised that he would come back and check in on me before the service started. And he did. Now, I'd love to tell you all about that first service, but the truth is, I don't remember who preached. I don't remember what the topic was, what the sermon was, what the scripture was. I don't remember the prayers. I don't remember the music. I only remember two things: that it didn't suck. Can I say that? And that someone was really nice to me. And if I'm honest, the fact that someone was really nice to me was probably the reason that I came back the next week. So I'm hoping for some of you, there might be a question kind of sitting under the surface, and you're thinking, well, Jeff, if you're gonna put yourself through that much anxiety to come into the church, why do it in the first place? Well, to understand that question, we have to go all the way back to my childhood. That childhood. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually had a great childhood, right? I'm the youngest of 4 boys. I know, poor mom. But actually, I am so much younger than my 3 brothers that when my brother Steve moved out at 18 and I was only 8, it was just mom, dad, and me. And I have incredible memories of sitting around the kitchen table with my mom, playing Scrabble or Boggle or cribbage night after night after night. And I have equally incredible memories of being out in the yard with my dad playing catch again night after night after night. The same dad that took me to all those early morning hockey practices in my childhood. And I could tell stories of wonderful Christmases, wonderful vacations, but it was basically, I was pretty lucky. It was a perfect childhood. And I knew that that's exactly the life that I wanted. So all I needed to do was, find the wife, get the job, buy the house, and have the kids. That's what the plan was going to be. Step 1, find the wife. But there was a little bit of a problem. I was a really shy child. So to say that in high school I had 2 or 3 dates, and that's playing pretty fast and loose with the term date. Well, I didn't meet the wife in high school, but that's okay. I was going to university. I was going to be with people of more similar thoughts like me. Surely I would meet the wife there. Well, did I mention that I was kind of shy? So to say that at my time at university, I had 10 to 12 dates, and that's playing very fast and loose with the term date. I didn't meet the wife at university, but that's okay. I was going into the workforce where I was going to be with people just like me. The only problem is once I got to the workforce, most of the women there were either married or had boyfriends. So I turned to internet dating. Met a few nice women, but nothing panned out. And next thing I know, I'm in my early 30s, and I'm still single. Not only that, I look back at my 20s, and the longest relationship I had was about 3 months long. And I was the guy who wanted to be married. But that's okay. I still had my career. As I mentioned earlier, I went to university. I got a 4-year honors degree in business administration and economics. And when I went into the workforce, I continued my education part-time in the evening and got a CMA designation. Today, that would be known as a CPA. And I could tell you all kinds of stories about being in the workplace, but I'm gonna sum it up with just this one line. And I say this with all due respect to people that have worked in the corporate world or are currently working in the corporate world and love it. It was not for me. I saw people making suboptimal decisions for personal gain. I saw decisions being made with no consideration to the customer that we loved so much. And I truly found it disheartening. So when I look at my life in the early 30s, I realize that my life looks something like this. I get up in the morning, go to a job that I don't like, come home to an empty house, make dinner, watch TV, go to bed, repeat. That was not the life that I had planned. There was a song by John Lennon called Beautiful Boy. And in that song, there's a line that says, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And I feel like that line represents what had happened to me. I had made my plan, life happened, and it was nothing the same. And that's why I ended up at Wellington Square that fateful morning, January 1998. Okay. Now, I could talk about all kinds of stories of me volunteering in different aspects of the church over the years, but I want to talk about just one. Now, when I first started at the church, they were experimenting with this new service. It was a service that involved guitars and drums and drama. Sound familiar? Well, that service was brand new when I started. And drama was a much bigger part of the service back then than it is today. Now, in the very early days, if they wanted to do a drama, they needed to just recruit people. Well, they were putting together this drama in which they needed someone who looked like a businessman. Now, I know you're thinking, hold on, this guy with the long hair and the scruffy, unkept beard? All I can say is I am so glad that there are absolutely no pictures of me from my early days at the church. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. So anyway, they were looking for someone who has this businessman look. Well, did I mention that I was kind of a shy kid? So I hadn't done any drama in public school or high school, but they asked me, first mistake. The second mistake, I said yes. Now I remember the experience. There were 6 of us, 5 actors and a director, and we'd get together and we'd start in with a check-in, just make sure everyone was doing okay. And then we'd do the rehearsal, work on the lines and the blocking, and then we'd finish every rehearsal with prayer. And if I'm honest, it didn't make any sense to me, but that's what the director wanted to do, so that's what we did. And then the Sunday came in which I had to perform this very first drama, and it was actually a pretty good experience. So much so that a few weeks later, I was in a second. And then several months later, when they finally decided to start a drama ministry, I was one of the first in line to join up. Now, over the years, we did dozens, if not hundreds, of dramas. But there was one drama that for me stood out above all the others. We did it about 20 years ago, and at the time, there was a commercial on TV for a beer company. Now, I'm not going to name the brand, but in this commercial, the main character, Joe, stood up and proclaimed how wonderful it was to be Canadian. And the drama team said, hey, can we do something with this? And we played around with it and came up with our own version, Joe Christian. And I got asked to be Joe Christian. That's him, actually, right there, mid-drama. And, well, here's the funny thing. When we did dramas, we usually would do one, and then that would be it. It would be gone. But this drama seemed to gather a life of its own. And I would say over a course of about 6 months, I performed that drama a dozen times, maybe more, here at Wellington Square, at other churches, even at Christian conferences. And I remember one particular Sunday morning here at Wellington Square, I had performed the drama, the service was over, and I was in the lobby. And people were coming up, chatting with me about how the drama made them feel and just their thoughts of the drama. When this very attractive woman comes up to me and wants to talk to me about the drama, someone I had never seen before, and we get into this discussion, and it's a nice discussion, and we chatted for a while, and I'm hoping some of you know where I'm going with this. That attractive woman that came up and chatted with me that Sunday morning to talk about the drama was Leslie. 2 days ago, we celebrated our 16th anniversary. Okay. And I just want to be clear. I want to be clear about something. Leslie is in no way the wife from my childhood image of perfection. She is so much more. She is my partner in every way. And even though I didn't meet her until I was in my 40s, she was every bit worth the wait. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward to say about 2017, 18, 19. My faith has grown stale. I'm still reading authors like Brian McLaren or Father Richard Rohr, but the messages here at Wellington Square were falling flat for me, so much so that I actually stopped coming. Fast forward to 2020, two big things happened that year. In February of 2020, I retired from the corporate world. The issue that I mentioned earlier, that it just wasn't sitting well with me, never went away, and it was actually starting to impact my health. And Les and I talked about it for a while and decided the best thing to do was just to step away. So at the end of February 2020, with a plan in hand, I stepped away into retirement. And 10 days later, the other big thing happened, a little something called COVID. And of course, my plan got thrown out the window. Okay, let's fast forward to 2023. I've been retired now for 3 years, and even though my original plan got thrown out the window, I have to tell you, I was nailing it. I had retirement figured out. No one had done retirement as good as me, right? And so the next step was I just needed to find a new church to attend. And then out of the blue, I get this email from our own Wendy Cox. Now today, Wendy is the head of our hospitality team. Wendy, thank you for that. But in early 2023, Wendy was the head of our ministry and personnel team. And for those of you who don't know, the ministry and personnel team, very simple explanation, is basically in charge of most of the church's staffing requirements. So she sent me an email indicating that Wellington Square was looking for a bookkeeper and would I apply? Except I was nailing retirement. I was happy. And I wasn't even coming to Wellington Square, so why would I even bother with that? So I replied to Wendy and I thanked her for considering me, but I declined. Now, if you know Wendy, that was just an invitation for an ongoing discussion. So over the next few days, we exchanged several emails, and I'm going to give you the gist of how the emails went. Would you apply? No. Please, no. Please, no. Please, let's talk. So we agreed that we would meet after service one Sunday morning to talk about the bookkeeper role. But to be honest, my intention was to hear her out and then decline. But something funny happened. We actually did not talk about the bookkeeper role at all. I don't even think it came up. What we ended up talking about was how the board of directors was trying to change the direction of the church. And I realized that this church was trying to become the church that I thought I was going to have to go elsewhere to find. So I did something I still consider is probably pretty crazy, but I stepped away from something that I was really comfortable with and really happy with, and I applied. And just in case you missed my opening line to this whole thing, I got the job. So early 2023 was a weird time at Wellington Square. Not only are we coming out of the backside of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, which of course every church was coming out of, but we didn't have a minister at the time. Nick wasn't here yet. And we were trying to change the direction of our church. So there was a lot going on. And I knew that if I was going to be involved, that I needed to do more than just be the bookkeeper. I was given a real opportunity to help this community that had helped me so much all those years before. And in fact, I've gone from this guy who was afraid to walk in the door to being handed a pretty significant piece of responsibility. So in prayer, it pretty quickly came to me that what I needed to do was I needed to offer to everyone else the same gift that was offered to me back in 1998. And that was to be a warm, smiling face and just let people know that they matter, that you matter, that you matter, that you matter. So as many of you know, that I come out about 10, 15 minutes before every service and just go around and talk to people. Let them know that I see them, that they matter. And while I have my regulars and I enjoy talking to all of you, I really like it when I meet someone new because I can offer them the gift of being seen. Okay. So I want to leave you with two takeaways. The first is this, that while Sunday morning worship is wonderful, and it is, I'm going to suggest that real spiritual growth doesn't happen here in the worship service, but it happens when we get involved. And please know that I wrote that down long before I knew the church was having a volunteer fair. But if you haven't been out already, go check it out. And I'm going to tell you, do it for selfish reasons, because if you want to grow in your faith, that's the way to do it, is by getting involved. And the second thing is, every week, Nick talks about how we're here to connect with God, each other, and ourselves. And this space is pretty good when it comes to connecting with God. And it's pretty good when it comes to connecting with ourselves. But in my opinion, this space is a little wanting when it comes to connecting with each other. Let's face it, how many faces do you actually see right now versus how many backs of heads, right? So I'm going to challenge you as part of your act of worship to make it a point every week, whether it's before or after the service, to meet someone new, to find a stranger and say hi. Not only will that make Wellington Square a warmer, more welcoming community, which I think we all want, but in reality, you don't know that other person's story. And it just may be that your warm smile, your bright, shining face is the one thing they need that might change their life forever. Case in point. Amen.